Welcome to this explainer. Let's get right into it because today we are unpacking a seriously fascinating story about industry disruption. Now, when we talk about the brutal, sudden death of the physical video rental industry, almost everyone thinks they know exactly how it happened, right? It's a super familiar tale. Blockbuster was this arrogant, slow-moving king, and Netflix was the brilliant, high-tech assassin that brought them down using the internet and streaming. It's a clean, modern story, but it's missing a massive piece of the puzzle. I'm so excited to guide you through the true story of how a glorified, low-tech vending machine completely upended an entire industry. Okay, let's dive into this. We've all been sold this official story, right? Netflix, complex algorithms, fiber optic cables playing the long game. But while Silicon Valley was busy trying to build the digital future, the real monster quietly strangling Hollywood from the inside out was something else entirely. We're talking about a 12-square-foot red metal box sitting right outside your local supermarket, usually next to the cheap bags of ice. This is Redbox. And they didn't live on the internet. They lived purely in the physical world. Back in the mid-2000s, this aggressively cheap mechanical kiosk did the absolute unthinkable. They captured over 50%, literally more than half, of the entire U.S. physical movie rental market. And they did it without using artificial intelligence, without a slick mobile app, and certainly without relying on high-speed data. No, they used a mechanical metal arm, a cheap touchscreen, and an incredibly aggressive business model that really drove the final nail into Blockbuster's coffin. Section 1. Born inside a McDonald's. The unlikely origin of a tech disruptor. To really understand how a vending machine conquered the movie business, we actually have to travel back to 2002. Inside McDonald's, there was this secret internal think tank called Business Ventures. McDonald's was desperately looking for ways to drive more foot traffic into the restaurants, so they started experimenting with automated vending machines right in their lobbies. They tried selling phone cards, movie tickets, they even tried selling fresh dairy products. Most of it just completely flopped. Until that is, they struck gold with DVDs. Why? Well, it was all about the sheer contrast in the customer experience. Think back to 2004. The typical Blockbuster experience meant getting in your car, driving 20 minutes to a massive dedicated store, and wandering the aisles, only to find the movie you actually wanted was out of stock. Then you'd pay $4.50, and if you were late, boom, you got hit with a $10 fee. Blockbuster famously made up to 16% of its entire revenue purely from ruining their customers' days with late fees. Redbox just wiped all that friction away. They put their machines exactly where you were already going twice a week anyway. The grocery store, the pharmacy, the fast food joint. The whole transaction took 30 seconds. And here is the real magic number that made the whole thing work. $1. Now, originally, these machines were actually blue and they went by the name TikTok, but they pretty quickly evolved into those unmissable fire engine red pillars we all know. The premise was deceptively, beautifully simple. You didn't need a computer, you didn't need an internet connection. You just walked up, tapped a screen to pick a new release, swiped your card to pay exactly $1, and walked away. It was a low-tech advantage that was simply irresistible to the average consumer. Section 2. Hollywood's $1 nightmare, the friction point that sparked a corporate war. And this brilliantly illustrates where things started to get incredibly tense. By 2008, Redbox was an absolute juggernaut. They had spun off from McDonald's, were mostly owned by Coinstar, and were purchasing tens of millions of DVDs every single year. Now, logically, you'd think Hollywood would be thrilled to have a massive customer buying millions of their products, right? But instead, the major studios were absolutely terrified of them. For decades, the classic Hollywood monetization strategy relied heavily on something called distribution windows. Step 1 was the theater release at maybe $15 a ticket. Step 2 was home video and DVD at $20 or more per disc. After that came premium cable and finally streaming. Hollywood made its real fortunes right there at Step 2. The whole ecosystem relied on impatient consumers who, if they missed a movie in the cinema, would willingly pay $20 premium to own it on a plastic disc the very week it launched. But Redbox, they completely shattered that model. Major studios, we're talking Universal, 20th Century Fox, Warner Bros., they realized Redbox was training a whole generation of consumers to believe that a movie's true value wasn't $20, it was $1. I mean, why go inside Walmart and buy a disc for $20 when you could just rent it right outside the front siding doors for a single dollar on launch day? Panic set in. So Hollywood executives delivered a super aggressive ultimatum to Redbox. They demanded they accept a 28 to 45-day delay on all new releases. Basically, wait over a month before stocking your machines. But Redbox flat out refused. They knew their entire business model rested on two magical words: new releases. If they only stocked month-old movies, the magic would vanish and the company would literally die. So they said no. In retaliation, the Hollywood studios brought the hammer down. They banned their official distributors from selling DVDs to Redbox entirely, trying to just choke off their supply line overnight. Section 3. Black Ops DVD Runs. The Guerrilla Retail War. So, suddenly officially cut off by Hollywood, Redbox was forced into one of the most bizarre and hilarious corporate spy games in retail history. To get the inventory they needed to survive, they went completely rogue, bypassing multi-billion-dollar film studios on their own. They hired legions of local contractors that act as secret shoppers. Every single Tuesday morning, these shoppers would drive to local Walmarts, Best Buys, and Targets. They would literally sweep through the aisles, emptying the store shelves and throwing every single copy of a new release into their shopping carts. They paid the full $20 retail price right at the standard checkout counter and then drove those discs straight to regional sorting centers to be loaded into the red kiosks. When the retail stores actually caught on and tried to limit bulk purchases, these contractors started wearing disguises. They used different credit cards, hitting multiple stores in a single morning. It was wild. Now, you might be wondering, how on earth was this legal? Well, the answer lies in a century-old American legal concept known as the first Sale Doctrine. Basically, it states that once you legally purchase a physical piece of copyrighted media, you have the absolute right to sell it, lend it out, or rent it out to anyone you want. The original Hollywood creators were completely powerless to stop this. Because technically speaking, Redbox was just a very wealthy, very organized consumer buying a movie and renting it to a friend. The brutal math of this guerrilla war, though, meant that by buying at retail for $15 or $20, Redbox now needed 15 separate $1 rentals just to break even on a single disc. That's compared to just 5 rentals when they were buying wholesale for $5. This undercover operation was incredibly chaotic, and it cost Redbox millions of extra dollars. But it worked. The red machines stayed stocked, and eventually, realizing they just couldn't stop the red tide, the exhausted major studios blinked. One by one, they signed peace treaties, agreeing to supply Redbox directly. Redbox had essentially beaten Hollywood into submission using nothing but simple mechanical kiosks. Section 4. The Ghost in the Machine. The Downfall of a Disruptor. For a brief, shining moment, Redbox was an invincible giant. By 2013, they hit their absolute peak. They were operating over 43,000 kiosks across the country and bringing in nearly $2 billion in annual revenue. They had completely conquered the physical market. But, the terrifying thing about technological disruption is that the cycle never ever stops. The very thing that made Redbox a killer was convenience, right? Well, grabbing a movie on your way out of the grocery store was peak convenience in 2008. But the new, ultimate convenience was rapidly approaching, never leaving your sofa. As broadband internet speeds increased and smart TVs entered every home, the plastic disc itself became completely obsolete. A metal R handing you a DVD simply couldn't compete with just pressing a button on your remote control and streaming a movie instantly. From that massive peak in 2013, things went downhill. They tried to pivot to digital streaming, but they were vastly outgunned by the billions of dollars pouring into Netflix and Amazon. By 2022, they were acquired by Chicken Soup for the Soul Entertainment for just a fraction of their former value. And finally, in mid-2024, the parent company officially filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy liquidation. Almost overnight, the order came down to shut it all off. Those 24,000 remaining bright red pillars, they turned into lifeless, functional ghosts just waiting to be scrapped. So, the crucial point is that disruption doesn't always require groundbreaking, high-tech engineering. Sometimes it's just about looking at an everyday process, removing the irritation, and making it beautifully accessible. Redbox didn't lose because their core technology was bad. They lost because the world simply outgrew the physical medium they were distributing. But man, for over a decade, they proved that a humble metal box outside a supermarket could bring the biggest filmmakers on earth to their knees just by using a simple mechanical system to make things easier and cheaper for the consumer. Which leaves us with this final thought to ponder. As you look around at the massive, seemingly untouchable tech and entertainment giants of today, ask yourself, what modern, overcomplicated industry could be disrupted today by something as incredibly simple as a mechanical metal arm? Keep your eyes open because the next massive disruption might not come from a complex Silicon Valley algorithm. It might just be sitting right outside your local grocery store. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.